Gandalf stands alone on the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, facing an ancient demon of fire and shadow. He is already weary from their fight in the chamber, but what he doesn't yet know is that his duel with the Balrog has just begun. In the next 10 days, he will plunge into an endless abyss, hunt through tunnels where nameless things haunt the roots of the world, climb many thousand steps up an endless stair, and at last fight a final duel on the mountain's highest peak where lightning smites the summit. This is the full fight like you have never seen it before. It is a snowy night in the misty mountains. Barely 20 days have passed since the Fellowship of the Ring left Rivendell on their secret errand to Mount Doom. They have just been beaten back from the cold and cruel mountain pass, and now they rest beneath a small hilltop. Their road was meant to lie over the mountains, but for now the Fellowship is defeated and must decide what road to take next. Every road left to them is a bad one, and the worst road of all is the one Gandalf has begun to consider aloud, a road that runs under the mountain, through the mines of Moria. Even the hobbits have heard about that dreaded name. But before this is to be decided, they must survive the night. As they hear the terrible howling of wolves, the company climbs to the top of the hill, lights a fire and sets a watch, for they had no longer any hope of going unnoticed, and they preferred now a defensive position in which to defend themselves if it came to battle. As the hours pass, in the deep middle of the night, many shining eyes slowly gather around the hill. Then suddenly, a great dark wolf shape halts at the edge of their firelight. A shuddering howl broke from it like a captain summoning its pack. Gandalf strides out with his staff aloft like a guardian. The wolf springs forward. In the same breath, Legolas' bow twangs, and the shape falls dead with an elvish arrow through its throat. The ring of eyes goes out all at once. The first attack is over, but only a few hours pass before many wolves silently gather for an attack and are now surrounding the Fellowship completely. Then suddenly, a storm of howls breaks out all at once, and the wargs now charge from every direction all at once. Aragorn drives his sword clean through the throat of the leader with a single thrust. Boromir sweeps warg heads from shoulders with a great two-handed swing, while Legolas's bow sings without pause. Then Gandalf rises out of the firelight like the stone monument of some ancient king set upon a hill. He strides out beyond the ring with a fiery branch to meet the pack, and the wolves fall back before his wrath. The whole hill is crowned with dazzling light. Legolas's last arrow kindles in mid-flight and plunges burning into the heart of the wolf chieftain. The pack shatters, howls with dismay, and flees into the dark. When morning comes, the dead wolves can't be found. Whatever these creatures really were, they were no ordinary wolves. The company no longer hesitates around their difficult decision. They all agree that the road under the mountain is better than being pursued by packs of hunters. The company moves with haste and at last climbs the stair falls, where a strong fall once thundered. There is no river there anymore. Instead, a dark, eerie, still lake lies spread across the whole valley, silent as glass, reflecting no sky. They come around the northern edge of the water in the failing light, headed towards the two towering holly trees, which mark where the elven road once met the west door. The company sees no sign of any entrance, for dwarf doors are invisible when closed. But Gandalf touches the wall and speaks words in Elvish while the moon rises. As a result, the door is suddenly made visible. While the location is now known, it is still locked. Gandalf then tries spell after spell in every possible language, but the doors does not move an inch. Again they hear the howls of wolves, and a sudden anxiety comes over the company as the door won't budge to the wizard's commands, but Gandalf sits deep in thought. Boromir hurls a stone into the black water in frustration, and something in the water answers without anyone noticing. Finally, Gandalf remembers the password. He speaks the Elvish word for friend, and the door opens up majestically. But in that very moment, a pale green luminous tentacle grabbed the ring bearer. Sam dashes to the rescue of his master and cuts the tentacle off clean with his knife. But the dark surface boils, and suddenly 20 arms come pouring out of the water, intending to bring the ring bearer into the pool. Gandalf quickly drives the company through the gate, as the tentacles attack like a horde of snakes. The many coiling arms seize the doors on either side, and with horrible strength they swing them shut. The horrified company has only one choice now: to face the long darkness of Moria, forgotten halls and tunnels for days. Gandalf leads on with the pale light from his staff, and they march together through many passages and staircases. It's a dangerous walk, for chasms crack open across the floor. Not only that, but Frodo begins to hear something, and it never quite matches the company's own steps. Indeed, it's at this time that Gollum begins to pursue the ring bearer, drawn to the power of the ring. Despite all this, the company continues and come to a three-way arch. Here they must halt, for even Gandalf cannot remember the next path. Making the wrong decision now might be disastrous. Moving into an old guardroom, they find a dangerous well without lock cut into the middle of the floor. While the others are resting, Pippin, the youngest hobbit, cannot help himself, and on impulse he drops a stone into the well. It takes long before he hears anything at all, but then a distant magnified plunk is heard. Gandalf's anger is quiet and terrible. Even worse, only a few minutes later, faint knocks are heard from the deep. Something has been disturbed. After some rest, Gandalf correctly chooses the right-hand passage and saves the company from potential disaster. For 8 dark hours, the company climbs on a broad old road before entering the Dwarrowdelf, a marvel of a hall. For a single instant, they see a mighty roof upheld by carved stone pillars, walls polished black as glass, 3 great arches opening in different directions. Gandalf will risk no more light, and they briefly halt for a rest. When they continue their journey to orient themselves in the vast halls, they enter a chamber with something curious, a great block of stone with runes cut deep. It is the tomb of Balin, kinsman of Gimli, and the company looks around for answers to explain the fate of the dwarf. Bones, broken weapons, cloven shields. Gandalf finds the remains of a book which tells of the short rise of Balin's colony. They battled the orc invaders. They retook Moria bit by bit, and they found Mithril, and Balin became the Lord of Moria. Then tragic events followed. Balin was killed outside the eastern gate. The Watcher in the water took a dwarf. The orcs took the eastern bridge, and then the subsequent end and last stand of the dwarf colony happened inside the exact chamber that the company is now standing in. Just after Gandalf had finished the last sentence, a slow rolling boom is heard. The whole room trembles. A great horn answers out in the hall. A cacophony of horns and harsh cries reply further off, and beyond the door comes the hurried noise of many running feet. Orcs beyond count, deadly black uruks from Mordor, and large cave trolls. The fellowship are trapped. Boromir quickly throws his shoulder against the western door and wedges it with broken sword blades and splinters of wood. Hammers begin to land on the door. A huge troll arm and foot is thrust through the widening gap. Boromir hews at the arm with all his might, but his blade rings off the scales and falls notched. Frodo springs forward and stabs the hideous foot with the elven blade's sting, and a huge cry of pain comes from beyond the door. Then the door burst. Arrows whine across the chamber, and orc after orc leaps into the room. Legolas takes two through the throat before the feet can touch the floor, and Gimli hews the legs from another. Boromir and Aragorn cut down many each. The orcs flee shrieking back through the door in horror. This was far more than they had expected. But suddenly, a huge orc chieftain charges into the chamber behind them. He turns Boromir's stroke aside with a shield. He ducks under Aragorn's blade with the speed of a striking snake, and then he charges straight at Frodo and runs him through with a spear clean against the wall. Just as the chieftain draws his scimitar to finish Frodo, Aragorn's blade comes down with a flash like flame, and head and helm are cloven together in one deadly stroke by Andoril. Wearing the best armor in Middle-earth, Frodo is unharmed to the great surprise of the company, for under his tunic he is secretly wearing a dwarven shirt of mithril. There is no time for explanation, and at once they retreat down the eastern stair, having bought some precious time. Gandalf stays behind the eastern door alone, and from the bottom of the steps, the company can just see the glimmer of his staff far above, standing on guard where they left him. More orcs enter the chamber as Gandalf prepares a spell to keep the door shut. But suddenly, the orcs are filled with fear, and Gandalf can sense something through the door which he has never felt before. Unbeknownst to Gandalf, a Balrog has come. In that moment, the drums broke out loudly, and the Balrog did its own spell. The doors open against Gandalf's will. In desperation, Gandalf utters a word of command. The mountain itself trembles beneath the clash, but there is too much power involved, and both the door, the wall, and the ceiling in the chamber bursts. Gandalf is hurled backwards down the stair, spent, shaken, and unable even to name what he has just faced. The muffled drums follow behind them for an hour, as they make for their escape in the long net of Moria. A low archway finally opens ahead, and they witness a great fissure that has opened right across the floor between the pillars. The eastern door and the bridge lie only a quarter of a mile away across the hall. They have almost escaped. But the drum rolls return loud. Harsh cries and horn blasts break out at the western end. The fellowship runs the last race across the hall. The orc host pours in behind them, with two cave trolls dragging great slabs of stone to bridge the fire. A great shadow reaches into the hall. In one hand it holds a red blade like a stabbing tongue of flame. In the other, a whip of many thongs. Legolas lets his drawn arrow fall to the ground, and Gimli lets his axe drop and covers his face in horror. Even Gandalf leans heavily on his staff. It's as if the whole company are suddenly fatigued. The Balrog doesn't hesitate and races towards the reluctant company, with orcs and trolls behind it like a commander leading his army to war. In that moment, Boromir raises the horn of Gondor and blows a great challenge. For a little moment, the orcs are filled with fear, and even the Balrog itself halted. Gandalf quickly regains renewed strength and gives his last command to the company. As the echoes from the horn dies out, the enemy leaps forward with ferocity. The Fellowship crosses the dangerously narrow span in a single file, but Aragorn and Boromir refuse to leave Gandalf's rear. Gandalf now leans on his staff in one hand, and in the other he holds Glamdring, cold and white. The Balrog now approaches the far end of the span, and its shadow reaches out on either side like two vast wings from wall to wall. Then Gandalf speaks.
You cannot pass. I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun. Go back to the shadow. You cannot pass.
The Balrog makes no answer to this powerful statement, but the flame in it seemed to die, while its shadow grew even darker, as if it was signaling its allegiance. Then out of the darkness came a molten sword, and Gandalf met it in a ringing clash of steel. The demon's blade shattered into molten fragments, and the Balrog falls backwards for a brief moment.
You cannot pass.
Then again, the Balrog leaps full onto the bridge. In that moment, the battle cries of Aragorn and Boromir rang in the hall as they leap to Gandalf's aid. But Gandalf now lifts his staff and brings down the bridge before him with all the strength he has left. The Balrog falls with a terrible cry. But as it drops, the whip lashes out one last time and drags Gandalf over the edge. The company watch in horror as the wizard utters his last cry and vanishes into the pit. As they fall, the Balrog burns against Gandalf as its fire wraps around him. The fall feels like an eternity, but at last they strike the bottom with a terrible crash. It is deep, still water, cold as death itself, and it almost freezes the wizard's heart. But both Gandalf and the Balrog are beings of the supernatural, and they cannot die merely from a fall itself. In the black water, the Balrog's fire quickly quenches, and it is no longer a thing of flame, but it becomes a thing of slime. It starts coiling like a strangling snake, and it is incredibly strong. Gandalf at last recovers and remembers where he are. But not long does it take before the slimy creature attacks Gandalf. For 7 days they fight in the flooded root of the mountain, in a place where time is not counted. Ever Gandalf hewed at the Balrog, and ever the demon clutched, coiled, and dragged him down. They were matched by equal strength, but at last Gandalf had the upper hand, and the Balrog suddenly fled from his face. But Gandalf's only hope of returning to the overworld now means following the Balrog. For these deep tunnels were not made by dwarves, and they run far below the deepest delving of any known race. Gandalf picked up the Balrog's trail, and many terrible things he witnessed during his chase, for the things that lives down there are nameless things. They are thousands of years old, older than Sauron himself, and they gnaw at the roots of the world from beneath, in a darkness that has never seen light. Gandalf never told whether he had to fight these creatures, but whatever Gandalf saw in those passages, he dare not mention the nameless things even in broad daylight. After days in this horrible place, Gandalf's chase pays off as the Balrog finds the Endless Stair, a mythical stair that climbs from the lowest dungeon to the highest peak of the mountain in many thousand of steps. In that moment, the Balrog suddenly turned upon Gandalf, and once again they clash. At last, the two combatants reach the top of the stairs. They break out into open sun at the very top of the mountain, crowned with the Tower of Durin. The Balrog bursts into renewed flame, and then the final fight, the Battle of the Peak, begins, which so many legends speak of. The powers that these combatants called forth for the final battle upon the Peak of Zirak-Zigil were terrible. Gandalf attacked with light and thunderbolts, and the Balrog returned the favor with overwhelming heat and firestorms. For 2 long days, both fight with all their strength unleashed. The battle can be witnessed hundreds of miles away like a terrible thunderstorm. The tower crumbles into dust, and the stair is choked with burned and broken stone. After fighting for 10 days since they fell from the bridge, Gandalf sees his moment, and with his last-ditch effort, he casts the Balrog of Morgoth down. The demon falls from the peak and lands with a terrible crash that shook the earth like an earthquake. Then, because of all the powers he had called forth and the wounds he had suffered, Gandalf the Grey gave up his body and passed away silently in the snow under the open sky. If you want to see what Gandalf was up to after he was brought back to life, I recommend you to check out these classics right here. One more thing, somewhere in this video I have hidden 3 Easter eggs, and I would love to know in the comments if you found them.